Attention. This story contains edited scenes. If you want to hear the unedited version, exactly as it happened, the link is in the comments. When I saw that guy standing alone in the square, something instinctive ran through my body, like a shiver that starts at the base of the neck and spreads slowly. The square was completely deserted, the kind of silence that feels heavy, almost physical, as if every sound were swallowed up by the darkness. The streetlights were few and far between, creating dancing shadows on the stone benches and twisted trees that surrounded the place. The early morning air was cool, heavy with the damp smell of earth, and I could hear the sound of my own footsteps against the uneven pavement, mixed with the soft rustling of dry leaves that the wind blew back and forth. I lived nearby, and since sleep refused to come, I had decided to take a walk, breathe, clear my head. But that figure leaning against a dark car, under the dull glow of one of the only streetlights still lit, immediately caught my attention. He had his back to me at first, and yet there was something about his posture rigid, alert, almost predatory, that made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with a strange excitement I couldn't explain. I seriously considered taking a detour, crossing to the other side of the square and continuing my walk without getting involved, but something in me refused to ignore him. Curiosity, or the desire disguised as curiosity, was stronger. I wanted to understand why he was there at that hour, alone, standing as if waiting for someone or something. My feet began to carry me toward him, and with each step, I felt my pulse quicken. The sound of my sneakers against the ground seemed too loud in that silence, and he slowly turned his face, noticing me. It was then that I realized I wasn't the only one watching him. He was waiting for me too. The yellowish lights from the lampposts cast a flickering glow over the square, creating patches of light and shadow that stretched like long fingers under the ancient trees. The bare branches cast crooked silhouettes on the ground, and the soft rustling of the leaves created an almost hypnotic background. There was something cinematic about that scene, as if the world had stopped right there, right at that moment, suspended in time, just me, the square, and that man standing next to the car. As I approached, the ground seemed to echo my footsteps louder than normal, as if each movement betrayed my presence. The air seemed denser around him, and my body reacted uncontrollably. A wave of heat began to rise up my legs, invading my chest, my stomach, until it reached my face, which burned even in the cold of dawn. A subtle shiver ran down my spine, settling like electricity under my skin, making the hairs on my arms stand up. This wasn't normal. This wasn't what men like me did. I was married, a father, 43 years well lived. My wife was at home, sleeping soundly, probably unaware that I had gotten out of bed, put a sweatshirt over my t-shirt, and gone out into the street in search of what, exactly? Fresh air? Peace? Or was it something I could no longer name? But the truth was this: something inside me was burning. It wasn't just the adrenaline of danger or the break from routine. It was an old, buried, silent desire that was now awakening like a hungry animal. Every step I took toward that stranger seemed like a step away from everything I had built, and yet I couldn't stop. When I reached him, I hesitated for a moment, as if my body needed one last sign of permission before crossing that invisible line between chance and intention. I looked at him more closely. His face, partially illuminated by the streetlight, revealed striking features. A thick, well-groomed beard that framed a firm jawline, dark, attentive eyes, but with a calm, almost inviting expression, as if he were already waiting for me. "Hello," I murmured, my voice coming out lower than I expected, somewhat muffled by the tension burning inside me. "Hello," he replied, raising his eyebrows slightly, and added with a discreet smile, "Can't sleep either?" There was something comforting in the way he spoke, a naturalness that somewhat dissolved the weight of the moment. I nodded, almost laughing at myself. "Yeah, not sleepy either." I decided to take a walk. I looked around, as if I needed to justify my presence there. "I live nearby." He pointed with his chin to the car, a dark model parked just behind us. "I work with an app. I stopped for a bit to rest, stretch my legs. The night is too quiet." We looked at each other for a few seconds, and then, as if the stone bench beside us were the only real thing in that suspended world. He nodded and sat down. Without thinking too much, I joined him. The cold of the stone passed through my pants and up my back, but the warmth of the body beside me compensated for the sensation. The conversation started simply, casually, fluidly. He spoke with a certain accent that I couldn't identify right away, and his manner was direct, but with a restrained, effortless friendliness. We talked about the neighborhood, the quiet nights in the city, the chaotic traffic, the rides he took during the day, and at some point, without realizing it, time began to slow down, as if the clock had decided to slow down, to leave us there, together, on that bench, hidden under the canopy of trees, where the light barely reached, but each other's presence seemed to illuminate everything. And the more he talked, the more I paid attention to details that I wouldn't have noticed before. The way his fingers moved when he gestured, his deep voice with an engaging tone, and the way he looked at me when I spoke, as if he really listened, as if, there, I wasn't just another bored man in the early hours of the morning, but someone worthy of attention. He was handsome in a way that wasn't flashy, but inevitably drew attention, like something that pulls you in effortlessly. 40 years well lived, marking his face with that attractive maturity that blends softness and virility in just the right measure. His stubble perfectly outlining his jawline, the strands beginning to turn gray at the sides of his shaved head, giving him an absurd charm, the kind of man you look at and immediately feel that he knows exactly who he is and what he wants. As we talked, with that closeness that came naturally, he leaned his body slightly toward me, as if he had already decided to break the invisible line between casual conversation and something more intense. And then I felt his hand rest on my thigh, firm and at the same time calm, a warm touch passing through the fabric of my clothes and rising straight to my chest, accelerating my heart at a pace I couldn't control. And when I looked back at him, his eyes were fixed on mine, deep, direct, as if they wanted to undress me inside before anything else. He smiled slightly, that smile that doesn't exaggerate, but says everything, and asked in a low, deep, calm voice, laden with curiosity and something else, something full of intention. Tell me the truth. What are you looking for here at this hour? At that moment, my words simply disappeared. My throat went dry, my mind became a whirlwind of thoughts, shame, desire, nervousness, all mixed together. I didn't know what to say, because maybe I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just knew that I wanted to be right there, right with him, and that made me feel too exposed. He noticed. Of course he noticed, because his eyes softened, and without expecting anything from me, he said with a welcoming calmness, "You don't have to answer. It's okay," as if he were allowing me to feel, to want, to give in. That's when he took my hand, his fingers firmly enveloping mine, in a secure, warm touch that anchored me there, in that moment. And before I could think of anything, he slowly approached, his face coming so close that I could feel his warm breath brushing my skin, and then his lips touched mine. The kiss was soft at first, full of care, as if he were tasting something he wanted to savor slowly, and then it gained intensity, flavor, heat, a kiss full of restrained desire and accumulated will, and in that second the whole world seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of us in that empty square, under the flickering light of the streetlights, as if nothing else mattered but that contact that set everything inside me on fire. As we kissed, completely immersed in that moment that seemed outside of time and reality, a distant sound, the dry sound of heavy footsteps on the cement floor, brought us back to the surface. It was the square's security guard, making his rounds, the flashlight swinging in his hand as he swept the space with beams of pale light. We quickly pulled apart, still panting, but without guilt, just with that feeling of urgency that unfulfilled desire leaves in the air. Fred looked at me with a knowing smile, almost conspiratorial, as if that brief scare had only increased the heat between us, and said in a low but meaningful tone, "Want to go for a drive?" I didn't need to think. I just nodded, still tasting him on my lips, my heart racing and that strange and delicious energy running through me. We got into the car. The interior was warm, with a slight smell of leather and a woody scent that seemed to come from him, something discreet but deeply masculine, which stuck to me without asking permission. The streets were deserted. The city was asleep, and he drove with impressive calm, one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the gear shift, while occasionally glancing at me with looks that said more than words. We drove to a high point in the city, a remote, almost secret viewpoint, one of those that few people know about, where the view opens up like a carpet of lights that seem to dance in the distance. The sky was clear, dotted with stars, and the wind blew lightly through the half-open windows, bringing the scent of the night mixed with the soft noise of the city below. There, at that height, everything seemed smaller, simpler, less right and wrong, more just, true. We stayed there, inside the car, the windows slowly fogging up with our shared breath, our touches gradually returning, our kisses becoming deeper, and the silence between one word and another filled with something that didn't need to be said. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something more difficult to name. A meeting of wills. Of two men who perhaps didn't even know exactly what they were looking for, but recognized each other in that moment. After a while there, he brought me back home. The ride was quieter, but not uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with thoughts, with mental replays of that kiss, that touch, that night. When he stopped in front of my house, we exchanged contact information with the naturalness of those who know that it would not end there, and it didn't. That was 2 years ago. 2 years since that unlikely night in that deserted square. And since then, even with different lives, commitments, busy schedules, different ways of living, we always find a way to see each other. Sometimes they are quick encounters, other times they are entire nights, but we never stop looking for each other. And whenever we meet, it's as if time has stopped again, just him and me, in that same mood as the first time, as if desire had learned to live quietly between us, always ready to reignite. Sometimes life surprises us in the most unlikely moments, and what seems like mere chance, a walk in the early hours of the morning, an unfamiliar face in an empty square, becomes a silent but profound turning point. When I think back to that night 2 years ago, I realize that we don't always understand what we're looking for until we find it. I left home just to escape sleep, but perhaps, deep down, I was running away from myself. From the suffocating routine, the rigid truths, the roles that society, my family, and even I myself had forced me to play. Married, 43 years old. A family man, everything seemingly in place. But there, under the flickering light of a street lamp, in front of a stranger named Fred, something in me broke free without warning, without planning, without permission. The desire that ran through me was not just carnal. It was a desire to feel alive, seen, truly touched. His touch on my thigh, the kiss, the knowing silence inside the car, all of this said more about me than any words I could have spoken in my entire life. Sometimes, a single gesture reveals who we really are, and that's what happened. Many people would hear this story and call it betrayal, impulse, mistake. But for me, it was the opposite. It was an encounter with myself, with a part of me that I had hidden for so long that I came to believe it no longer existed. Fred didn't come into my life as just any lover. He was, and still is, a living reminder that inner truth always finds a way to emerge, even if it's in a deserted square in the middle of the night when the whole world is asleep. And since then, every time we meet, it's as if I reaffirm to myself that living is not about following formulas, but about listening to the most sincere impulses of the soul, even if they challenge everything you believe to be right. Because in the end, what matters is not what others think of us, but who we are when no one is looking, when the heart speaks louder than fear, and when desire guides us with the strength of those who know that time is short, and that living half a life is a silent way to die. And it was there, that night, that I began perhaps for the first time to live fully. My name is Philip, and this is my story. Have you ever experienced something similar? Leave a comment. And if you want to hear everything, the way it really happened without filters, the link is there in the comments too.